Hi everyone. So I'm going to tell you a couple different methods today about how to do construction in ceramics. We already know how to do the pinch pot. That one's pretty easy where you start with the ball and then you use your thumb to pinch out. So today we're going to learn about the coil method and the slab method. Here's two examples of pieces that are done with these methods. So this is the coil method on the left and this is the slab method on the right. So right away you can tell that there's some differences between these two. We're going to learn how to do both of them. There's pros and cons to each of them, and you can decide for yourself which ones you want to use in your project. So first of all, the coil method. In our vocab, we've learned that it's made using a coil. Coil, so a long snaky rope of clay, and you're building on top of a base that you already made. So for the coil method, the process is mainly just attaching, scoring and slipping, attaching, building up layers of coil. So what I'm going to do first is I have my base that I've already made. It's about pencil thickness. I have a tool that's sharp. I have my slip. And I also have another tool that's going to be on hand to smooth things out. When you're making coils, this is what you're aiming for. Bigger than a pencil's thickness as well. I'll show you how. So you have your clay right here. What you can do is just start pinching it. You can break off a piece and pinch it out, roll it out onto your board. You're going for uniform thickness, so about pencil's length or pencil's thickness or more. And you want to be as consistent as possible when you're making it like this, because if you have lumpy coils, then your product will look lumpy. The benefit of doing coil method is that you can do lots of interesting shapes, and it kind of slows the process down a little bit for building. So then you can have time to decide what you want to do. If you want to make changes, that's all right. So I'm liking about where this is right now. So what I'm going to do with my base, I'm going to measure how much coil that I need. I can see that I've made a little too much. That's great though. So I'll cut it off right here. I'm going to be slipping and scoring both sides, like always. Another thing that's interesting about the coil method is that you can actually make some really big things with this. One time in college I was able to make a sculpture that was about 3 feet tall. It's just very slow. And this method, it's very important, even just for the slab as well, that you have a drawing ahead of time so that you know what your piece is going to look like at the end. You know how to build it. So I'm slipping it. I've already scored. Now for the length of the coil, you're going to pretty much be able to eyeball it and see how much you need. So I'm covering the base, and I'm seeing that there's some clay left over here. That's fine. I'm going to cut it. And there's no way to make the coil perfectly even, so that's why I always keep a little extra clay on the side so I can fill in those gaps. So now that I've connected it, I'm going to blend it in. Pushing down, I'm marrying one piece of clay to the other. And remember, for all good attachments to work, they need to be about the same wetness. So this isn't leather hard yet, it's still very wet clay, but enough that it can hold itself up. So I'm going around the inside, blending it together. It's just like how you make an attachment. Then I'm also going around the outside as well and blending one piece of clay into the other. I'm going a little fast right now by doing this, but when you guys make yours, it'll be a little slower. You want it to be as precise as possible, and you want to really blend those two pieces together or else they might crack. Alright, I've blended those together, and now I still have this little gap here. So what you're going to do, you can have a little extra piece of clay and fill in that gap. I could just do that by pressing it on and then smoothing out the top. Alright, and I'm smoothing it out. So I've gotten this far. Now I'm going to do one more, but for this one, I'm not going to blend it in all the way. I'll explain why. So what I'm working on right now gives me a very smooth, seamless attachment, but something that people do like about coil is that you can actually see the coil in some people's projects. And that's just a personal preference. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm scoring again, like always, this side. And then I have my coil, I'm going to score that. Yeah, the trickiest thing about this is making sure that your coils are about the same thickness every time, because if they're not, then your walls start to get a little wonky and lopsided. So I'm slipping one side, slipping the other side. You guys know what I'm talking about. Alright, so I've put my coil on my piece. But what if I do like the way that this coil looks? I don't want to blend it in all the way. So I'm going to take my tool and only blend in the inside. I just want to get rid of that seam. The con, I guess you would say, about this project for doing coiling is that it is a little more time consuming, but what I like about it for a pro is that you have a lot of control. Yeah, it's slow because, yes, it is hard to make sure everything's consistent, but then you have a really nice control over what your project looks like. So now here's the coil on the outside. You can choose to leave it there. All you can do is just smooth it out, because you've already slipped and scored the inside, so you know it's going to stay. But if you just like the way that coil looks, then of course your whole project can be very visible looking coils. So I'm just smoothing it out as I go. Alright, and so this is how that would look. The final result would be something like this. See how it's smoothed out over here, but I left this coil visible? And there you have it, that's the coil method. So our next one we're going to be doing is the slab method. A slab is a very fast way to make a vessel, but it can be pretty tough because it can get away from you very quickly. So when you roll out a slab, it's going to look like this. It's about a pencil's thickness. It's flexible, it's in a good place where I can move it around. The final result would look like this. So slab is really attractive to a lot of people when they first start because they think it's really fast, it's easy, and that's true. It is fast and easy, but you have to have a lot of control over the moisture of it. And also when you line up the seams to attach them, it can be a little bit complicated. So we're going to go over that right now. So I have my clay. I'm starting out with a ball. And you're also going to need a rolling pin for this, like I have right here. So I'm putting the clay on my board. And then I'm going to start rolling. Anyone who's ever done cooking before, you've done this with dough, if you're making cookies. Alright, so I'm moving it back and forth, left and right. I'm rolling gently, because if you go too hard when you roll it, the clay will start to get a little lumpy and lopsided, and we don't want that. So I'm rolling back and forth. I'm trying to go long more than go short because remember this is going to be going all the way around my base, which looks like this. So it's going to be a little bit on the long side. Alright, and if you notice that you're starting to go too thin, that's alright. You can just start over again. Alright, once you get in a good place with it, like how it's looking, you're going to take a sharp tool that you have just sitting around on the side. And you have to really think about how you want your shape to look. For just the purpose of this demonstration, I'm making a cylinder, so mine's going to be a little on the thin side. I'm drawing two straight lines that need to be parallel. I'm removing those extra pieces of clay, and then I'm going across. And this may look kind of basic, and some people don't like the slab for this reason, that you kind of have basic shapes. But there's actually templates online where you can make some really interesting forms. so we're going to be able to practice with that as well. Alright, so I'm scoring one side, like always. Scoring. Scoring the area I'm going to touch. And then I'm also checking to see how it lines up. It lines up perfectly. But I'd recommend that you all measure as well. So you can notice where I have this seam, it is very weak over here. You need to find a way to overlap it a little bit to make sure that it works. So I have it right here, lined up. I'm going to make sure that I know the area where I'm going to score on the bottom. Because we always need to score wherever we're going to attach anything. Even since this is a small area, we still have to do it. So I've got my slip attaching to both sides. Alright, so you all need to be very careful at this stage because the clay is a little wet. When you attach it, you need to really, don't push it too far. So see how those clay pieces are overlapping right here? I'm just smoothing them out a little bit also. Since they are overlapping, we do need to slip and score both of those sides as well. So now that I have it lined up, I can just do a little score and slip. This is your mantra. Every time two pieces of clay go together, you need to slip and score. Every single time. I wouldn't tempt fate. So, especially since we're going to be using these vessels to drink out of, it needs to be able to hold water. There can't be any seams in them. So I just went over, started blending them with my finger, but the best way to do it is with a tool. So I'm smoothing it out now. I'm holding my hand on the outside as I smooth the inside, because as we know, clay is very responsive to our hands and to tools, so we need to apply equal amounts of pressure. And then see how I have that seam still on the outside? I'm holding the clay with my fingers on the inside, and I'm gently going over with the tool. Alright, and so I'm starting to blend that out. At this point, the wall is very weak. I'm doing the best job that I can with blending it, but it's also very fragile at this point, so I'm not going to put my hands on it too much. I also have little extra pieces of clay on the side that I'm going to use to fill that seam on the inside. So I'm getting tiny mini coils and lining them up along the wall where I had the two pieces of clay attached. Now for these pieces, we don't need to really slip and score them because they're just so small and they're filling in the cracks that already have slip and score on them, so sometimes less is more. This would be that one instance where you would not slip and score. So I'm pressing down with my tool on the inside to push those little tiny coils into the cracks, just giving that extra assurance that there aren't any holes in it. Going around, giving it the once over. And also I'd recommend doing that for the outside too. If you have just any little tiny pieces of clay rolled up into tiny mini coils and put them around the outside to smooth out with your tool. So you can tell both of these are a little tougher than the pinch pot method because it just involves more time drying and it takes a little longer to build. But it makes your works more versatile and you have usually like a thinner product as a result. So yeah, there's the two. You can decide which two you want to use, which of the two, or you can use both for your project. And it's important when you store them, like at this stage they're a little wet and fragile, always try to keep a little moist paper towel on the inside. Not like dripping wet, but just a little damp to keep holding that shape. And then when you store it, same thing, wet paper towel around the outside and put it in the plastic bag. Alright?